In this presentation, we'll record adjusting entries related to the receivables allowance and depreciation into our not-for-profit practice problem within QuickBooks Pro, QuickBooks Desktop. Here we are in our private college practice problem. We currently have the open windows open. You can open the open windows by going to the view dropdown and selecting the open windows list. We're first going to take a look at our Excel sheet to get an idea of what our objective will be. We are on number 8 in our practice problem. Scrolling down to number 8, it starts off with adjusting entries to increase allowance for doubtful accounts. So we have to increase the allowance for doubtful accounts. Why? This is similar to a for-profit type of organization where we have receivables up top. In this case, we have the tuition and fees receivables. We have to estimate how much of those are going to be uncollectible. So we're going to say the tuition and fees receivable of those, the allowances needs to be increased by the $13. So we're not going to get into a lot of detail on the calculating of how would you get to that amount. There's a couple methods you could use. It's going to be very similar to a for-profit type of organization. We do have a course that gets into that in much more detail. If we take a look at then the journal entry, we're going to be increasing the allowance for doubtful accounts, and we're going to be recording the other side to tuition and fees, which is kind of like our revenue type of account. So tuition and fees, note what's happening here is typically we're saying, all right, we recorded in essence revenue to the tuition and fees. We've overstated it possibly by the amount that we're going to estimate that we're not going to be collecting on for one reason or another. We're not going to be able to collect it on that. Therefore, we've basically overstated the tuition and fees. We need to bring them down by the estimate that we think is not going to be collectible. Note, in a for-profit type of organization, we would typically use another account like bad debt expense. Here, we're taking it directly to the revenue account. And so we're going to be decreasing the revenue account, something you don't typically see in a for-profit type of organization or not-for-profit. It typically only goes up. This isn't a case where it's going to be going down by this estimate. We're going to go back up top and look at the allowance. So the allowance is going to be up here. We're going to be in the allowance for doubtful accounts for the tuition in R6 equals, scrolling back down, we're going to pick up that 13. So there we have that. And that should put us back in balance down below, indicated by the green zeros. It's going to be, in this case, decreasing what would be like the net income accounts. So if we take a look at that in QuickBooks, typically this is something that's not going to be using a form with because they are adjusting entries, and typically we will be using journal entries to do that. So we can't really avoid basically the journal entries for adjusting entries. Typically we could use registers and whatnot, but this will be usually entered with straight journal entries. So therefore, within QuickBooks, we're going to go to the company dropdown. We're going to go to the make journal entries. We're going to make the journal entries. I'm going to say close that as of the end of the month. Let's say the 31st. And we're going to say that the account then is going to be a debit to tuition and fees. So tuition, I'm going to start typing in the tuition and fees. And we want the unrestricted. The amount was for 13. So we're going to say 13. And we probably want in the memo something like an adjusting entry. So the AD at the minimum, so that we know that this is an adjusting entry. And then the other side is going to be going to the allowance. So allowance for doubtful accounts, and we want the allowance for the tuition. Allowance for the tuition. This is going to be an adjusting entry, ADJ entry. Now on the classes side, we could put in the class that we want this to be unrestricted and unrestricted. Okay, so let's record that. Take a look at what it will look like if we go to the save and close. And yes. And let's first look at the trial balance. Go into the reports drop down. We're going to go to the accounting and taxes and take a look at our trustee trial balance. We'll change the dates up top from 01/01/20 to 12/31/20. Then we'll change the customize reports. We're going to go to the fonts and numbers. We're going to change the font. We'll make it number 11. Okay. Yes. And okay. So there we have that. What happened here up top is we have our receivables and we need the allowance for the tuition, which is here, the 28. Double clicking on that. And there we have our increase of the 13. The other side then is going to the income type of account, which would be like on the income statement. And we want the tuition and fees unrestricted. Here it is. Double clicking on that. Scrolling down, there's our 13 there. Closing this back out. Second transaction, we're going to go back to Excel. I'm going to ungreen this one. The next one is going to be for depreciation. So I'm going to scroll back over. Number 8B. If I scroll down to 8B, we're going to say that we recorded depreciation expense at the 26,560 amount to the instruction and the amount to academic support. Now, depreciation is going to be the decrease of or the allocation of the cost of equipment to the time period that it was consumed in. That's going to be the concept related to depreciation. We won't get through the different types of depreciation or calculating it here. We do have a course on that if you want to take a look at that. Note that the journal entry usually for a for-profit is always going to be a debit to depreciation expense, credit to accumulated depreciation. Here, however, we're going to be breaking this out for what it was used for, the amount to instruction. So rather than debiting depreciation expense, we will be debiting, in this case, scrolling back up top, the academic support expense and the instruction expense, because that's what the depreciation was consumed for. So if we record this out, then notice we got the credit is going to be increasing the contra asset account accumulated depreciation by the 26,560, just as it would in a for-profit organization. Then the debit, we're taking out the amount that's going to be going here is going to be that 26,560 for the academic support, and the academic is going to be 30% of that. So it's going to be, in other words, the 26,560 times 0.3. That's where we're getting that 7,968. And then the difference is going to be here in the instruction expense. Recording this out, then we'll record the debit to instruction expense. So if we find the instruction expense, we are here. We're in cell R26 equals, scrolling over to that 18,592. There we have that. It goes up in the debit direction. Then we have the academic support. So academic support expense, here is that. We are in R27 equals, scrolling back over to that 7,968 and enter. Those then go up in the debit direction. Other side, accumulated depreciation. So we'll scroll up to accumulated depreciation. So here's our property, plant, and equipment. We're in accumulated depreciation in R11. We're going to say equals. Scroll down to that 26,560. That increases the accumulated depreciation, which will decrease the book value. So there's going to be our transaction there. We're going to record this then into QuickBooks. Similar type of method. We'll go straight to the journal entries to do so. So we're going to go to QuickBooks. We're going to go back to the company dropdown. We're going to go into the make journal entries, and we're going to keep it at January 31st. The debit is going to be to instruction expense. So we're going to say instruction expense. That's going to be the debit for 18,592. So we're going to say 18,592. I'm going to say in the memo this is an adjusting entry. And then the other side is going to be going to, or not the other side, the other debit, academic support expense. So that's going to be academic support expense. And then the amount of the academic support is going to be the 7,968. So we're going to say that's going to be 7,968. Adjusting entry, ADJ entry. And then we're going to say the other side is going to be accumulated depreciation at the 26,560. That's going to match the 26,560 here. That's going to be an adjusting entry as well. Entry, and then we're going to say that the class is going to be unrestricted. So unrestricted, and then unrestricted, and unrestricted. We'll record this out then. We're going to say save and close, and yes. Take a look at the trial balance. So if I scroll up to the top of the trial balance, we're looking at the property, plant, and equipment there. And then we have the accumulated depreciation, which is on top of it because it's in alphabetical order within that class. within that type of account, I should say. Double clicking at the 131, we have the 26,560. Double clicking on that, we will then get to our journal entry. Closing this back out, we want to say the academic support account is another account that will be affected. So we have the academic support. Double clicking on that, there's our journal entry. There's the adjusting entry name. Closing this back out, and then we have the instruction support. Double clicking that. There's actually, what was the other account? It was the instruction expense. So it's so we have instruction expense is where we recorded it. So double clicking that, there's the adjusting entry there. Gonna close this back out. Then we can look at this in terms of the profit and loss by class, just to make sure that it's been placed in the proper class. So we go to the reports drop down. We go to the company and financial. We want to take a look at that profit and loss by class, changing the dates up top from 01/01/20 to 12/31/20. And basically we put it into unrestricted. Now, if another column had popped up which said that it was unclassified, that's typically what would happen if we forgot to put a class in there. Easy to fix then. We just go into that unclassified area, reassign the class, which would be unrestricted.